Welcome to the Tennessee Achieves Virtual Community Service webinar. These webinars are designed to provide you, Tennessee Promise students, with an opportunity to learn more about college success tips, careers in your potential field of study, and other topics we think you will find interesting while you are navigating your educational journey. These webinars will also help you complete your community service requirement while it may be difficult for you to do so at this time. A few housekeeping details before we get started. By logging in as a Tennessee Achieves student, we are able to track your attendance and how long you remain actively engaged during the webinar. Once you complete the webinar, you will automatically be given credit for 1 hour of community service. We will track how long you watch, and if you do not watch the webinar in its entirety, you will not receive credit. You do not need to complete the community service form for these webinars. Tennessee Achieves will log your hours for you. Tennessee Achieves staff and partners across the state are providing important insight and information we think you will find entertaining and informative. We hope you enjoy this new series of webinars. Welcome to the Tennessee Achieves Virtual Job Shadowing webinar. We are excited that you have joined us today to learn more about professions and opportunities with a law degree. We have a really exciting panel with us today, 3 attorneys with very different backgrounds that are practicing different types of law today and doing very different things with their law degrees. We have Chris Fry, who is a partner at Ford, Nichols, and Fry in Loudon, Tennessee. We have Judge Kelly Thomas, who is on the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, or is a judge for the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals in Knoxville. And we have Dustin Click, who is an assistant district attorney for the 3rd Judicial District of Tennessee. So, gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, glad to be.
Judge Thomas, why don't we'll go maybe in order of, tenure in the career. We'll start with you. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your career path, what you do now, what did you do prior to becoming a judge? And then I think for everybody to set a little, our audience here, our Tennessee Promise students, so talk to us a little bit about where you went to college and what your degree or degrees are in.
Sure. I went to college at UT Knoxville and graduated with a degree in political science. From there, I went to the University of Tennessee College of Law, graduated with a JD degree, and I started in private practice in Maryville with my dad. That was way back in 1978. There were just 2 of us in the office. He was a great litigator, and so I fell in with him and tried to get on that same path. He had to retire after a couple of years, so I was left by myself, which was very interesting, 2 years out of law school. And then I practiced with a friend of mine for a while, and in 1990, which is kind of weird, but I was recruited by the Republican members of the bar, and I'm a Democrat, to run against a sitting circuit judge and in the general election, and I was fortunate enough to get elected in 1990 and served as a circuit judge doing primarily criminal cases until I was reelected in 1998, and then I was reelected again in 2006. Shortly after I was reelected, Judge Gary Wade left the Court of Criminal Appeals and went to the state Supreme Court. And in November of 2006, Governor Bredesen appointed me to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And I have been in that position since that time. So that is the route that I took. And I guess we can talk later about what all that means if it becomes relevant. But that's how I got where I am.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that background on yourself there. And I think you may have left off the most important line on your resume is you've been a Tennessee Achieves mentor for the last 7 years.
I have been. That's correct.
Chris, if you'll tell us a little bit about your background, also where you went to school, what you're doing now, a little bit about the kind of law that you practice, and also a mentor of 7 years. So we have 14 years of mentor experience between the two of you so far.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it had been 7 years. So not to copy Kelly too much, but I grew up in Maryville, Tennessee, and graduated from Heritage High School before going to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and getting a political science degree. I toyed with trying to get a French minor, but gave up on that towards the end. After law school, after undergrad, I took a year off to go teach English in Korea, and came back and started law school at the University of Tennessee, where I had planned to be a transactional lawyer. But as we'll talk about later, you don't always end up in the legal career that you saw yourself in. While in law school, I clerked for a medium-sized downtown Knoxville law firm, and that did what's commonly known as medical malpractice defense and civil rights defense. But after getting my license and passing the bar, I started a private practice, just a solo operation in Farragut, Tennessee, and did that for about a year before joining what was then Ford and Nichols here in Loudon, focusing on probate and estate matters. And I currently serve as the Loudon City Attorney and do that as part of our overall private practice.
Great. Thanks so much. And Dustin, I was pulling your record as well, a tnAchieves mentor of 6 years. So 20 years worth of mentoring experience on the webinar today. So we appreciate that from you guys. But Dustin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, where you went to college and what you're doing now.
I'm Dustin Click. I am from Greenville, Tennessee. I went to my undergrad at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where I majored in political science. After that, I went to the University of Memphis to get my law degree. After graduating law school and passing the bar, I joined a small firm in Clarksville, Tennessee. I was there for 3 years before I decided I wanted to move home. I opened my own practice and worked as a solo practitioner for 4 years. And then last May, I joined the district attorney's office, and I've been working there since.
Excellent. So we've got 3 lawyers now at different points in their career, all born and bred in Tennessee. So all Tennessee, all went to high school in Tennessee, went to college in Tennessee. So students that are listening to this today, this is certainly applicable to you, and something that if you're interested in, I think these 3 guys are showing you that it's certainly within your reach. So we'll start out by asking all of you a question, and feel free to hop in any order that you would like. But our audience today are Tennessee Promise students that are in college. Some of them are in high school, so we've got a mix there. So what can students be doing now to prepare for law school? And it sounds like all 3 of you had an undergraduate degree of political science, but what are some really good undergraduate majors for students to be thinking about if their long-term plan is law school? Judge Thomas, I'll put you on the spot. Why don't you start?
Okay, that's fine. What you can do now, whether you are in high school, finishing up in high school, which is going to be a little weird, evidently, this year. So we can almost talk about that in the past tense. But what you can do to prepare yourself for law school is to take courses that develop your critical thinking skills and your communication skills. And above all, start working hard and focus on what you're doing. If I had it to do over, I would take more English at UT. I don't know that I would have majored in English, but I would have taken a lot more English for the reason of it preparing you to organize your thoughts, construct a paragraph that makes sense, and to be able to get your point of view across to whoever you want to get it across. Political science was fine, and I enjoyed that, but more English skills would have helped me when I got to law school, dramatically helped me in law school, and of course, by this point, I finally learned some things, and it's not such a big issue. But other majors, I think econ's a great major, accounting's a great major. As we all said, poli-sci's fine. But all those kinds of things will develop the way you think and the way you analyze things. And back to my first point, develop good work habits and work hard, because as these other two gentlemen will tell you, practicing law is difficult.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I think that writing piece is really important. It's something we hear from a lot of employers today, that a lot of students aren't really great writers, and it's a skill that they could certainly use.
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasize that as well. But basically, anything you can do that sharpens your research and writing skills is going to be a huge tool in law school and in the workforce. If you're pursuing law, you see all the oral argument on TV, but the vast majority of legal work is done on paper. And other than the majors we've already mentioned, I think there's a large benefit to studying a foreign language. If you're proficient in really any number of foreign languages, it adds a lot of value to you as an employee or as a practitioner.
Dustin,
One thing I'd like to add, that a thing that students can work on right now is their organizational skills and their time management skills. In the practice of law, you're going to be constantly hit with deadlines that have to be kept, and being able to plan and prepare to meet those deadlines and know how to get that work done is crucial to our business.
That can't be overstated, by the way. That's time management, and learning to prioritize and budget your time is huge, because if you don't do it, it leads to all kinds of problems.
Yes, sir. And I think that's something that we hear from employers, again, across a wide variety of career paths, not just in the field of law, but all across. That time management and meeting deadlines, working in a team are all very important. Judge Thomas, I'll stick with you for a minute. As someone who's been in the profession for a few years, what are mistakes that you see young attorneys make, and what can students that are interested in becoming an attorney now do to prevent from making some of those same mistakes?
One of the mistakes that I made when I was a young lawyer was I thought I knew more than I did. And my dad used to get a kick out of that. So don't ever think that you don't need to learn things. One of my father's favorite sayings was, after he'd been practicing 40 or 50 years, and I thought was about the best trial attorney I'd ever seen, was that there's a reason they call it practicing law, because you never really learn it completely. So that's a mistake. And the other mistakes that I see are centered around not being thorough and not working hard. And I hate to keep repeating, but these things bear repeating. Not being on time with what you're supposed to do, and that leads to skipping things that shouldn't be skipped. So you can learn right now to avoid those mistakes by, as these other two gentlemen have been saying, focus and develop your work habits. Learn to prioritize and manage your time and budget your time. And I know we keep saying this, but I can't tell you how critical that is, having sat on the bench for as long as I have and watched lawyers. And the sad thing is, not just young lawyers. Some never get it. So those are the mistakes that I see, and there's no magical cure. Again, it's just hard work. Work hard.
Yes, sir. You can overcome just about anything with a good work ethic, I think.
You can. You certainly can. And anything that's worth anything is difficult. That's just a truth. So there you are.
Yes, sir. Chris or Dustin, anything you want to add? Mistakes you've seen made, or maybe mistakes you've made that if you had to do over, you'd go back and change?
Well, yeah, I have to second what Judge Thomas said about managing time. There in the law, lots of times we're dealing with scheduling orders, and they have unfortunately become more like scheduling guides, and there is a lot of cases that seem to linger, and people in the justice system deserve to get outcomes one way or the other as soon as possible, and lawyers need to do more to either manage those expectations or get their cases ready for trial and get them resolved.
Great. Chris, we'll stay with you for a minute. You're in a private law firm right now. Talk to us a little bit about the pros and cons of practicing law in a private firm.
Well, for one thing, there's all kinds of private firms, from your 1,000-lawyer multinational firms in the big cities to solo practice, and I guess I'm somewhere in between. I'm in a 3 attorney private practice that has diverse fields. We do everything from personal injury and domestic to probate and estates, and a little bit of everything in between. So one of the things that I enjoy most about it is the work-life balance that a firm of this size affords. Being your own boss has a lot of pros and a lot of cons as well. You're very dependent on attracting and retaining new clients. There is no built-in client base that that is going to necessarily be there from month to month or year to year. So you've got to adapt, and you've got to evolve. You've got to keep learning, like Judge Thomas said, to grow and expand your practice. And the legal needs today are not necessarily going to be the legal needs tomorrow. So that I feel like that's important. But I think with the biggest benefit to what I'll characterize as a smaller practice is you get to build relationships with your clients. You're personally and professionally invested in outcomes and not just billable hours. But I mean, don't get me wrong, billable hours are important to keeping yourself focused and managing your time. And I guess that's what I'd say about that.
Great. I appreciate that. Dustin, you're on the opposite side. You are working in the public side of the law profession at the moment. So what do you think are the pros and cons? You've also worked on the private side. What would your advice be, or what would you say pros and cons to the public side?
The pros and cons for the public side, really, one, your overhead's taken care of, so you get to focus more on practicing law, and because you don't have that added pressure of running a business. I like that. Another pro is that you're working for the public. So whether you're a district attorney like myself or a public defender, you kind of take on that role of fighting the criminal justice, and trying to get the best outcome. I'm trying to get the best outcome for the state. There'll be a defense attorney trying to get the best outcome for their client. It kind of lets you serve, in my opinion, a higher purpose, instead of maybe trying to get a few more dollars for your client, which I'm not saying anything wrong with that. It just, being in the public sector gives me a little bit higher calling of practice than when I was in the private sector.
I just want to touch off of Dustin's. I don't want people to think that in private practice you can't also do public service. There's plenty of opportunities in private practice to be leaders in your community and to serve on nonprofit boards or serve as a mentor. Pro bono work is a very large aspect of private practice, and those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, Chris, I know that you're very active in the Loudon community. I know that you're been the president of the Rotary Club. I think the president of the Young Professionals. One of the key components of Tennessee Achieves is this idea of being involved and being active in your community. It's why we have a community service requirement. It is why we have a 9,000 person volunteer program. Why do you think that community involvement is so important?
Is that for Chris, or are you going back to?
I was asking Chris, but Judge Thomas, if you got some comments.
No, I was just waiting to hear what Chris said.
No, I'm sorry. I thought that that was for the floor. No, I mean it's an incredibly important part of being part of a community. Getting out there, doing work for others is really what we're all here for. Our jobs allow us to be able to do things like that. And if it were just about the 9 to 5, then I think the entire legal field should pack it up and go home, because we all have a higher calling.
Yes, I think with everybody that helped us along the way to get to where we are, we owe it to our communities to give back to them. Not everybody is a lawyer, so where we can help people, we should. We have that duty placed upon us through our professions to do that.
I agree completely. I think my take on this is that we're wired to be happiest when we're helping somebody. And there are many opportunities in the law to help people, because if they didn't need help, they wouldn't be talking to you. They wouldn't be, they're a victim of a crime. They're a person who someone's trying to take advantage of or whatever. And they need their lawyer. And that can extend, like these two men have said, outside of the office and into the community, and you have an opportunity to be a huge help with nonprofits, and it's very, very gratifying if you want to look at it from a purely selfish standpoint. When you're helping somebody, you're going to enjoy it.
And Judge Thomas, talk to us a little bit about the responsibility as a judge. I know at one point in time when students were coming through your courtroom, I believe you were asking them to keep up with Tennessee Promise requirements to help provide that path. But talk to us a little bit about, the judicial system is not here just to punish, but to rehabilitate, and what that responsibility as a judge is like when someone is standing in your courtroom that has maybe found themselves in a bit of a pickle, a little bit of trouble. Finding that balance and what that responsibility is like to make sure that the people that find themselves in front of you or one of your colleagues are eventually going to set themselves up to be successful.
A crime, as both Dustin and Chris know, has a very profound ripple effect on a lot of people. So we all agree that we don't want a person committing more crimes. And our sense of criminal justice is changing, thankfully, over the years, and our governor is spearheading a large move in the realm of criminal justice reform. We're starting to see that what we've been doing in many ways is not working if you think the task is to reduce crime. So I was involved in starting the second, what we used to call drug court in the state. And now there are many of those that are rehabilitative kind of restorative justice courts, whether veterans courts or whatever. And that's a reaction to what you ask is, what do we need to do to help this person not be standing here anymore and not be in jail and to be a productive member of society? So, there was a time when a lot of people didn't think that was our job. I always kind of thought it was. And I think it is because, back to what I said, you help a lot of people, not just the defendant, but you help his future victims or her future victims, and you help their children. You help, back to the victims. It's life-changing to be a victim of a crime, whether it's just a theft. It changes you, and not for the better. So I think judges and lawyers and prosecutors all have a calling and a duty to do things that make sense to try to reduce the recidivism rate and cut the crime rate.
Very well said. With Chris or Dustin, would either of you like to elaborate or add anything to that?
Yeah, I sit on the board of our recovery court in Hamlin County. And
good for you.
Thank you, Judge. It is truly satisfying to see those individuals that come into our program and are able to kick an addiction habit and are able to better themselves and become productive members of society again. You see complete turnarounds in their life. And some of these individuals had lengthy criminal history before that. And then to see that them not reoffending is really gives you hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate your guys' comments on kind of that, power of working with humans and working with people and making sure that it is about more than just standing in front of a courtroom in a time of trouble. So I appreciate those comments for sure. This next question is for all of you. I think we've started with Judge Thomas every time. So Chris, if you want to start this one, we'll start with you. Mix it up a little bit. I think a lot of what people think lawyers do is what we see on TV or what we see in movies, big trials, high stakes, a lot of drama. What is it really like to be a lawyer? And what are some other jobs outside of what we see on TV so often that you can do with a law degree?
Well, you're right. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the practice of law happens on paper. So whether that is responding to motions or briefs or drafting contracts or advising businesses on best practices, it doesn't all happen in a courtroom. So I think one of the biggest things that I think you can do with the JD is in human resources. There are a lot of HR managers for small, medium, and large corporations that either have a JD or would be well served by having a JD, because there are just so many issues that come up in the workplace from a personnel standpoint that I'm not an employment law specialist. It's too much of a field for me to devote to becoming an expert at. So whenever an issue like that comes up, one of my clients, I know an attorney to call. Same thing with contracting. There are a lot of folks outside of the licensed attorney field who are very proficient at contract review, contract drafting, contract negotiation. Government is littered with people with JDs serving in all kinds of roles. I just think from my graduating class at UT, I can think of numerous colleagues who have never stepped foot in a courtroom, but have found very rewarding fields in government or in business. So,
yeah, great, Dustin. What about you?
I would echo what Chris said about what you see on TV is only a sliver of what lawyers actually do. Most of our time is spent researching and writing in our offices or meeting with victims. As far as other things that you can do with a law degree, I think the one thing law school really does is it changes the way you think. You learn to think more critically. So I think it opens up really any employment opportunity you want that requires someone to be able to solve problems by thinking through, all the available options.
Judge Thomas, what do you think? And I think also maybe to elaborate on this question a little more for you specifically, again, what we see on TV and in movies is a judge sitting in front of a courtroom, presiding over a court. What else are you doing in your job? What's happening kind of behind the scenes, what we don't see on TV?
Let me follow up just a second on what Dustin said. Law school, a law degree is a very, very useful tool because, as he said, it has taught you how to approach and solve a problem. And I can't imagine any business or whatever that you would be involved in that would not be a good thing to be able to do. And you do, there's many branches of our government, all of them have staff attorneys, and they perform very, very important roles. Our administrative office of the courts, now this is an organization that manages the courts across the state, we have staff attorneys. We have a staff attorney in our building that works for the judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals. So, there's tax attorneys, business law, all those kinds of things. Now, the behind-the-scenes stuff for us is these questions that are being wrestled with are of the most important kind for the humans involved. And whether it's their money or their freedom, and or how they can do things. And so the judge's task is to, behind the scenes, work, as I think Chris had said earlier, to make sure, first of all, that these issues are dealt with in a timely manner, because not having an answer to that question can be extremely hurtful to the people involved and can have some very dramatic fallout. So you're doing that. You're managing the docket with often hundreds of cases, and you are sort of moderating the procedural arguments that will come up along the ways between the parties necessarily. It's just a part of how the case works through the system. So we spend a lot of time over here doing that. I was shocked when I came to the Court of Criminal Appeals. The first month I was here, our presiding judge, Joe Tipton, who's now retired but a brilliant judge and a great lawyer, told me, he said, "Kelly, you're the motions judge this month." And I said, "Motions judge? What? Motions are over. We're talking about what happened in the court and the final analysis." Oh, no, they're not. And so even at this level, when we're just dealing with appeals from the criminal courts, there are still motions. There are things that people have issues with procedurally that still have to happen. So that's another thing that the judge does. What the judge does not do is investigate a case and go out finding facts and talking with witnesses, talking with lawyers. It is very important that everything that happens in a case happens with all the concerned parties present, whether by email or by correspondence or in court or whatever. We do not allow a judge to have a conversation about a case with one litigant or one lawyer as to the exclusion of the others. So that's something the judge is not doing behind the scenes. You're not a fact gatherer. You keep the case on track and you kind of decide what facts come in and what don't, but you don't go out and work them. So, and sometimes a judge behind the scenes finds herself in a position of sort of mediating a dispute between the lawyers. I never did allow a personal argument between lawyers to go on in court for very long at all. I'd stop it really fast. To me, the reputation of our profession is very important, and we are not going to improve our reputation in the public's eye by calling each other a liar and cheats and so on and so forth in open court or in the paper, in spite of how they act in Washington. So that's something else that I think judges have a role in that you don't see up front. I've talked too long, but that's let Chris or Dustin one argue with some of that or add some things that they think judges should do that they don't or whatever.
How about it, guys? Anything judges shouldn't be doing that they're not, or things they're doing really well?
Well, no, going back to managing the docket and my comments earlier, I know judges are under immense pressure to move these cases through the system, but lots of times they don't get help from the attorneys who are actually trying to prepare the cases for trial, or should be preparing the cases for trial. And I know that judges have a lot of friction there between letting a lawyer try the case that he or she is capable of trying, and basically getting it over with. And so I respect the job that the judges have to do to balance those competing issues.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys' comments on some of those behind the scenes things that we're not seeing on TV and in the movies all the time. Dustin, we'll start this next question with you. What is the jobs outlook for these students that we have in college right now that want to become lawyers and attorneys one day? Where will the jobs be, and what does that look like here in the next few years?
I believe our society will always need trained individuals to argue for rights for a wronged individual. So I believe that the outlook for lawyers in the future will be good. As far as to where the jobs will be, I believe they'll stay mostly the same as they are now. I believe, if anything, they'll grow because you're starting to see more technicalities that will have to be litigated growing in our society. So as those grow, the chances for conflict will arise.
Yeah, I agree with Dustin. I entered law school, at the height of the Great Recession in 2008, and was basically told for the 3 years that I was there that law schools were producing more lawyers than legal jobs were being created. But the like Dustin said, the jobs will always be there for attorneys. It might not be the job you pictured for yourself or the job that you had planned on, but if you work hard and you stay focused on not your first job out of law school, but maybe the job 5 years from now, you'll end up where you need to be. And there will always be a need for attorneys in rural and underrepresented populations that have never had the level of representation that they need.
Great. Judge Thomas, you have anything to add?
I agree totally with what they're saying. Our world is changing, but the fact that there are going to be disagreements is not changing. And it may be, if it's changing at all, it's becoming greater. And the World Wide Web and all the technology and things that I have no understanding of at all bring with it all kinds of developments and changes in the law. And it takes trained lawyers to navigate those waters and develop the body of law, whether it's science, technology, or whatever that is changing. So all of those things are very exciting arenas to get into. And as Chris has said, and as Dustin has said, there are always people in our communities, particularly we're all kind of from rural communities, Maryville and Loudon and Greenville, that need to be sitting across from somebody getting help. That ain't gonna change.
Yes, sir. Well, we're going to wrap all of the webinars with 3 questions that are not so much career specific, or at least not so much specific to being a lawyer or attorney, but kind of broad. So Judge Thomas, we'll go with you first on this question, and we'll rotate as we go. But for all of you guys, what is one thing you wish you knew while you were in college that you didn't know?
I wish I knew how important it was to focus on the task at hand and not be distracted. Whether it was having fun, playing intramural football in class, or whatever I was doing, to focus on what I was doing at the time and not let other things interfere.
Great. Chris?
I wish I would have studied Spanish. I think it would have come in, it would have been very beneficial to clients that we interact with on a weekly basis. And just seconding what Judge Thomas said, I wish that I had gotten out of my comfort zone and tried more things. College is about the experience, and it's the time to find out what you're really capable of.
Right. Dustin, what do you think?
2 things that I wish I'd known in college would be, I wish I'd learned to study, my study habits better there. And I think the other thing would be just to enjoy the moment. And that 4 years goes by awful fast.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. All right, Chris, we'll start with you on this next question. If you had one piece of advice for students today, what would it be?
I think this is a common theme we've talked about, but basically, if you're in college or on your way to college, then you have the resources available to succeed. If you've made it this far, then if you can use your faculty, use the career services office, use your time in class. If go to class, stay on schedule, don't fall behind. College is set up to allow you to succeed.
Dustin?
The thing I wish that students would know today would be go to class and work hard. Don't just go through the motions. Actually try to learn something, and maybe take that class that challenges you a little more, that forces you to think, because that'll help in the long run.
Great. Judge Thomas?
You are going to the place in college where you can get all the materials and the skills you need to build your life. And so it only makes sense to me to get as many of those things as you can. There is plenty of time to have a great time in college, and the social aspect of it is very important because you learn how to get along with people that are different from you. And that's a skill you need, but you need to focus when you're in class, pay attention, go to class. Like they said, take things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone. Don't be too narrow in your focus on your coursework. And get all those tools that you can get, because, you don't want to be looking back saying, man, I wish I could have done that. So do it.
Yes, sir. That's great advice. All right, we got one final question. Dustin, why don't we let you kick us off? This, I think, is maybe my favorite question that we're going to do on all of these webinars across all of the topics. But if you could be anything, if you could do anything professionally, and if it is what you're doing, that's great. But even if it's not being a lawyer, not being an attorney, you could do anything professionally, what would you be doing? What would you like to do? What's the dream?
I think I would stay where I am. I enjoy having the opportunity to help people solve problems.
Great. Judge
So
Thomas?
I'll stay where I'm at.
Perfect. Good answer. Judge?
I've enjoyed things all along. People keep asking me when I went from one position to the other, do you miss being a lawyer? Do you miss being a trial judge? I missed the drug court, recovery court. My favorite thing, though, and this may sound a little weird, but and it's not that I don't really like what I'm doing, because I do, but the biggest kick for me was defending people charged with murder. And I did a couple of first-degree murder cases right before I went on the bench, and got really good results in them. And I don't know if I used to be an adrenaline junkie or not. I'm not anymore. But that was my favorite thing.
Great. Chris, finish us strong.
All right. Well, if I can't be a professional golfer or a sailboat captain, then
I forgot about the golfer thing. I should have said that.
I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy where I am. Growing up, I pictured myself on those legal dramas in a 100-story office building in Washington D.C., but I can't imagine having the work-life balance that I do here. I've got plenty of time to focus on my friends and family and hobbies, while devoting all the time that I need to my clients and to my community. And I think it's just a great spot to be.
Well, great. Well, thank you, all three of you, Chris Fry, Kelly Thomas, Dustin Click. Thank you all for being here with us today. We've got three attorneys doing three different things at different points in their careers, and hope that for everyone that tuned in today that you've learned something valuable. I know I'm a novice to the law profession. I've learned a lot of things today. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you all for serving as mentors for a combined 20 years. I'm not sure that we'll get a group of three people that can claim that. So thanks so much for your time, and thanks for just always being such a supporter of Tennessee Achieves and our Tennessee Promise students.
Thank you
for what you all do.
Thank you, Graham.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And to our audience that tuned in today, thanks so much. And I hope that you will join us on another of our webinar series to learn more about careers across the state of Tennessee. Have a great day. Thank you for watching this installment of the tnAchieves Virtual Community Service webinar. Your attendance will be automatically recorded and your 1 hour of community service is being credited to you. Please click Submit on this screen to ensure that your attendance is recorded for you. For this community service opportunity, you will not need to complete the community service form. We hope you found this opportunity to be engaging and informative. Please watch more of this series by visiting www.tnAchieves.org. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.